our culture was similar in the sense that we party. Our families like to have a good
Exactly.
time,
To dance.
But I'm also from a Caribbean island, and Cuba is an island. We
Exactly.
do things differently than they did in Colombia, and I'm like, why does everyone say we're the same? We're not.
Yeah, like, and it's a very dangerous thing to do. You can't like when you come to like I remember a couple of years ago I was with Terry Turek from he's a head of innovation at Enactus, and we were just like discussing the idea of social change within communities, and Terry would say to me that the thing I always ask myself is how do I, like, we always talk about changing stuff, but what do we preserve? And it's such a great question. Like, how do we actually build a tech ecosystem we love and enjoy, but also preserve some of the things that make Miami unique Miami? And how do we, as like VCs or just like community builders, actually celebrate some of those things and make sure we don't like diminish just like the value of these like very simple things, like just like being more like open to connecting with anybody. Like that's I feel like that's something like just like naturally ingrained in us as a predominantly immigrant driven community, and just like knowing that these social circles for so long have excluded us. So how do we preserve some of those things? And like, this is always my biggest, when I got into venture capital, I really hated the idea that a lot of VCs like tend to pattern match, because we miss out on huge opportunities because people don't speak to us the way that we're supposed to understand. And I was very ignorant about that at first. Like, people would come and they would pitch ideas, and I was like, oh, this person clearly didn't do their work. But then it, like, I was like, I'm a part of the problem because I'm mostly interacting with founders from underrepresented communities, who might not have had the exposure, even know how to talk to VCs in the first place. Like, nobody teaches you how to talk to a VC.
It's a whole new language too.
In college, right? So I met one founder who came to me and she was talking about like selling tickets into her company. I was like, you're selling tickets? like what is this? And I caught my ignorance because I was like very like standoffish on our call, and then I texted her and I was like, hey, like, can you come like hang with me for like 2 hours, like drive up to Miami, let's hang, let's chat, like bring your pitch deck and let's talk. And I spent 2 hours with her and we went through her entire deck. I gave her like, I was like, just like read these things. And I was like, yeah, I apologize. It's like, excuse my ignorance for instead of practicing empathy and trying to understand the business through like your lens as a founder.
That's the thing that we don't have these days.
Yeah. Don't get me started on
Yeah.
that. But yeah, I was like instead of just like saying that you're supposed to like, check these boxes in my head, I really understand your business and what you're building is actually very, very valuable. And when I thought about it, you actually don't need venture capital for the next couple of months. So like focus on just like scale, on scaling, and then let's talk money in like a couple of months. And she fixed her deck. She worked on her stuff. She eventually like went on and she got investments in her company. And I was like, there's such a huge difference in the way we think about like increasing diversity, is that some people just want to, they talk about the pipeline problem, but I don't think it's a pipeline problem. I think it's a bottleneck problem, because like we have
education in general. It's the understanding, like we don't have access to it. And also, if you continue to silo yourself in the groups of DEI, we're all going to stand by together, and you're not pushing outside the boundary and getting uncomfortable, because sadly it requires getting uncomfortable for you to educate yourself. It's the same thing if you don't feel that sense of belonging in a community and you want to join tech, but you're not a part of tech, so you're like, oh no, because I don't know anything. If you don't push yourself out there, put yourself in front of people that probably know, but you may not know, and you say, hey, I don't know, but I'm here and I want to learn. Like, we need to be also compassionate and have more empathy towards those people that are willing to step out of their comfort zone in a space where maybe people have done their research, maybe people know how to speak to each other, but then we get stuck with each other and we don't get out and educate the rest of the population.
So I really love that you brought that idea, because when I stopped and thought about like what is my personal thesis on this like diversity, equity, and inclusion in tech, I was like, the greater portion of this is just literally a network problem, and what I call like these like circles of influence, right? So you are born in a community, you will probably just identify with all those people in the community. Your friends will probably look like all those people in the communities, you never like care for expanding that kind of like network that you know, right? And
because safety is the feeling of belonging. It's a place where you feel
comfortable. Exactly. So if you the easiest way to move the needle is literally just by looking at your circle and being like, what voice is missing from the people I take counsel from the people I give access to me or access to my resources. Like what voices or who's like missing from this. And I guarantee you, like, so I'll give you an example here in Miami. I think I do like dinners where I will invite some of my friends who, I mean, I'm Black, I'm from the Caribbean, they're also Black from the Caribbean. I'll invite them to these dinners. I'll invite some of my other friends who identify with different other racial identities, who are probably like high net worth individuals, and we just all come and do dinner. We're all in tech, but we're not like talking about tech. We're connecting about our love of food, or love of music, or love of other things. And then what ends up happening is that all these people become friends, and then they ultimately end up like doing business together, or you know, they end up like giving somebody like an investment, or like just that's just like a very simple way of getting other like communities of people interacting and working together, and we just like complicate the whole the diversity.
The problem is just that it's been standard that we like we just travel in groups and groups that we feel comfortable
Herd
in.
mentality.
And the best way to see the change in that is like from childhood to adult, like to your 20s and your 30s. How much has that changed? Because the friends that I had when I was like younger in high school are very different than the friends that I have now. Even though I know them longer, I have a best friend that we met in 6th grade. And it's the only friend I was allowed to, being strict family, like Cuban, don't let you go anywhere. Like I can only go to her house, and I can only go to her house at specific times. So it was like the only friend I ended up having by omission, just because it was the only one I was allowed to have. And my parents can communicate with her parents because they both spoke Spanish. Although we were different cultures, it was allowed. So then for years we became friends, and we've been friends forever. We're very, very, very different now. Right. But we had something to share at the time, so we were friends long term.
Yeah, proximity. That's all here. You're a neighborhood person. That's all we have now. We have all this opportunity, and now we have different things in common. Honestly, the friends that I've kept the longest, a lot of them ended up kind of being like, I gotta ask a couple of these people, like,
It happens because
just because we had the same kindergarten teacher doesn't mean we have a lot in common anymore.
You get exposure to more as an adult than you do as a child, maybe growing up, because you're in that circle. And if you're an immigrant, even more, because you migrate towards something that feels like home.
Literally.
Because you lose the sense of home and everything feels new. It's like, it's a big world, and you're almost afraid of going too far, to the extent that your family forces you into. You have to learn how to belong. They gave me an American name in Cuba because they said that I needed to be able to fit in. Mm-hmm. So you're constantly trying to fit in. It was like the list of names could not be Hispanic. Elizabeth had to sound like an English name. Alicia had to sound like an English name. Like there was a list. And the reason they did that's like, so when you come to America, you need to fit in. But so you don't know it, but you're like, only picking the same group of people that you can talk about the same things. You don't have a rich friend because you're not have that exposure, and then you also feel dumb if you try to be around someone that maybe is slightly smarter than you because maybe you at the time had an accent and they didn't. So it's just like you grow up learning to fit in, and then you get to a point where you're like, I'm exhausted. I don't even know who I am or what I like, because I've been fitting in all my life. So that's why your friendships change. Because as an adult, you go in through this, like, that's when, like, breakdowns happen. And then you're doing all these ayahuasca trips, and you're searching for your soul. You're quitting your job. You're starting your own thing. You're finding friends in the space. Now you've started to become who you are. Mm-hmm. So we need to stop pushing the comfort zones, like staying in those comfort zones of like working in these groups. Like, I feel comfortable with you because we're all Hispanic. No, we need to educate people in the uncomfortable space that we live in of, okay, we're not the same, and that's all right. And if you mess up, not hate each other for it. Hey, you said something, it was hurtful. And